Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny Joey Jones, along with Lisa Booth, Leslie Marshall, Dr. Nicole Sapphire, and Tyrus. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President Biden is in the fight of his political life. He's facing a make-or-break weekend that could cost him his re-election. The president campaigning in Wisconsin and trying to convince voters he's mentally all there. And he did it from the safety of a teleprompter.
Now, you probably heard we had a little debate last week. Can't say it was my best performance. We love it, Joe. But ever since then, there's been a lot of speculation. What's Joe going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? What's he going to do? Well, here's my answer. I am running and going to win again. Guess what? They're trying to push me out of the race. Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. You think I'm too old to beat Donald Trump? I can hardly wait. Anyway.
He at least looked awake, but it wasn't all smooth. One guy was holding up a sign behind the president that says, "Pass the torch, Joe." And of course, there were some slip-ups.
I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020. Oh, by the way, we're going to do it again in 2024. I know I look 40. I keep seeing all those stories about I'm being too old. I wasn't too old to create over 15 million new jobs. To beat Big Pharma, the first one to ever do that and lower the cost of it to $35 procedure. He's one of only 2 American presidents who left office with fewer jobs than when he came into office. That's why I call him Donald Herbert Hoover Trump, creating the largest deficit any president has in one term. Now he's announced he wants another $5 trillion tax cut.
Yeah, the president trying to stem the bleeding from one brutal report after another. First, we learned how the president told Democrat governors that he needs more sleep and he plans to not schedule any events after 8 p.m. He also joked that it was his brain, not his health, that was the problem. And check out the latest headline from New York Magazine. It talks about the, quote, conspiracy of silence among Democrat officials, activists, and donors to prevent the public from learning the truth about Joe Biden's decline. It claims, quote, longtime friends of the Biden family were shocked to find the president did not remember their names. Here's another stunning claim. Dr. Jill Biden had to whisper a donor's name into Joe Biden's ear after he went blank. Biden now faces his most critical test yet. He's going to be interviewed by ABC's George Stephanopoulos. The liberal media is giving us a preview of what George may ask.
If he gets asked directly, do you have early stage Alzheimer's? Do you have early stage dementia? Has a doctor told you that you have a condition, or was this just an 81-year-old being an 81-year-old? He will tell us the truth. I hope he gets asked those questions directly. I hope he answers them directly.
Today, George Stephanopoulos is all of us. He's every journalist in the country. He's also many voters who want answers from this president. Astoundingly, Jim, the White House is almost portraying this interview as a cognitive test, like it's some sort of televised doctor's appointment.
Yeah, so, I guess they've reached their epiphany. Tyrus, did he make everything all good today? I know you watched
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Oh, wow. OMG moment. Like, he is...
You're voting Biden. That's what I'm saying.
You're writing Biden.
I feel like I'm talking crazy. I don't understand. And it's on both sides. Why are we even having this conversation? There is no speech to save him. We saw what we needed to saw. Anybody with a pair of eyes who's been watching TV for the last 3 years know everything. They can't fix this. They can't change it. They can't make them bigger. The questions we need to be asking out of what we saw with the debate is who made the call on Afghanistan? Who's in charge of the Pentagon? Those are the questions we need to be asking, because he officially is letting us know now between the hours of 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. he's available. So do we have an evening? Do we have a night shift president? Like, that's the question. How involved is Dr./President Jill in his stuff? His son is now creeping around. He can't save this election. They've defrauded the American people for over 3 years. Why do we care who replaces him? It's the same corrupt that's committed fraud. So it doesn't matter what speech. George Stephanopoulos could bring Jesus Christ in today and they'll break the net and he will still call him Moses. Like, it's over.
I think Joe Biden falls short of both of those folks. Lisa, we watched this montage of liberal media that have covered for Joe Biden this entire presidency. Did they reach an epiphany? Are they just now objective and putting America first? Or do they see that President Trump might win and that scares them?
They see that President Trump might win, and that's why they're intervening here and trying to force Joe Biden out of the race. Look, Joe Biden recently in an interview with a Wisconsin radio host said that, oh, my dad taught me when you get knocked down, you get back up. But can he do that without life alert? And that's the question that Americans are asking themselves right now. I mean, that Economist cover with a walker and the presidential seal and saying no way to run a country, that's what's seared in the minds of Americans across the country. And it does matter because he's still in this race. He's still vying for the presidency. So he's not out. So all of this is relevant. It does matter. And I worked in political communications for a long time before I got into TV. And there's the rule of three. The first time something happens, it's a story. The second time it's starting to get legs. The third time it's a full-blown narrative. And we are in an escapable narrative right now about Joe Biden's health, so much so that we've even seen a 5-point increase of Americans who think he's too old to be president since the debate. And I think maybe he could survive it if inflation wasn't so bad, if the border wasn't so chaotic, if the world wasn't in the midst of potentially a third world war. But he was supposed to be the anti-chaos candidate. And we're having conversations if he has dementia.
I must be on the first time because I haven't made it that second time where it starts to get legs just yet. I don't.
Oh, Joey. It's fine. But not wrong.
I know. I need to leave those jokes alone. This is serious business. Doctor, I want to play this clip from you. I believe this is CNN's chief medical correspondent, Sanjay Gupta, talking about the medical side of it.
Testing can be so important, and I think the real question you're trying to answer is, are these episodes just episodes that could be explained by lots of things, or is this reflective of something that is deeper? If he were my patient, frankly, if he were my father, I would advocate for this sort of testing.
What do you think, doctor?
Sanjay Gupta, I like him a lot. He's a neurosurgeon just like my husband is, but I find this morally offensive. I wrote an opinion piece for the Daily Mail, September 2022, saying the exact same thing, saying we are starting to see a physical and mental decline in the president, and I started calling for cognitive tests at the annual physical, and I started getting called out for just criticizing, and I shouldn't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. And now you have them across the board doing it. And it's like, now it's because they just cannot deny it anymore. It's just in their face. It's very disingenuous to not have been doing it for a while because the American people have watched this. And one thing that I say, we have seen President Biden continue to talk about this. Let's put his cognitive decline aside. What about the fact that he continues to say President Trump's the only president who left office with fewer jobs? We were in the middle of a global pandemic. I mean, do they think the American people are so dumb to really think that that is a stat worth, campaigning on? Absolutely not. And it just goes to show you how little respect they have for the intelligence of the American people. And if they keep saying, look at this bright little colored things that we're waving in front of you, don't pay attention to what's actually happening behind the scenes, just continue to vote for us. That is the opinion that they have of the American people, and they're continuing to do so with President Biden.
Leslie, I know that you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and choose violence every day with those progressive views of yours. Is the real story...
No, we progressives have passed, or at least I am. So.
Is the real story here all of these big name donors that are pulling out and saying, we're not going to give another dime until someone else is on the ticket? Is that a real concern, and could that actually be the deciding factor?
No and no. And the reason is, I mean, when you have almost 30 million that comes in after that terrible debate performance, okay, so how much is going to come in when he has more and better performances?
Yes.
And I want to speak to that, okay, because, people will say, when they make assumptions, you're a liberal, you're a Democrat, this is what you think. No, this is what I think. I thought it was a terrible debate. If I saw that repeatedly, that would be a problem for me as a voter, regardless of my party and regardless of who is running, one. Two, I don't think that this interview tonight is where we put everything, because you need more. First of all, you need something in the evening. Second of all, you need something where it's just not one person, or if it's a teleprompter, because most of us know that when we interview people of this caliber, you have parameters when you interview a president, a former president, even high-ranking senators and congressional members, and many times the questions are given in advance. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see Joe Biden do a nighttime town hall that is not scripted, without a teleprompter. And even then, by the way, it wouldn't be good. You mentioned Jesus Christ. Let's bring him up. Because I think if Jesus were running and walked down water as a Democrat, Republicans would say the tide was very low.
Leslie, come on.
With all due respect, it wasn't a one-off.
Yeah, America's been
He's shaking
catfished.
hands
We've
with
been
the air.
catfished.
He's had to be escorted
You're
away.
insulting half of the American people.
Yes, I am.
You're insulting
I'm
my
not insulting
entire
half of
party.
them.
He has
I'm talking
spoken-
about
he
all
has
people.
delegates.
I was catfished.
Tyrus, he has the delegates.
Leslie, he has
I don't
said
care
he has
what he has.
spoken to dead
He hoodwinked
European
them too.
leaders.
He
He's-
catfished everybody.
He has said he has spoken to dead European leaders. There are videos of him struggling,
And
not knowing where to go.
Donald Trump's made no mishap.
Leslie,
Donald Trump's has
Leslie,
not
this
made
is-
any has said any
Leslie,
lies.
I've never seen him miss a
One
handshake.
every 1,000.
Leslie, Joe Biden
That's
is
fair. I'm gonna try one.
81 years old. And if he can't survive...
So don't
and-
vote for him.
And if he can't
That's your
survive... well,
choice
of
as
course
an
I'm
American.
not. Why would I... First of all, he's a terrible president. Even besides being 81, he's probably one of the worst presidents we've ever had. But beyond that, if he can't get through an interview with George Stephanopoulos, who he was a Democrat operative. He's still a Democrat operative.
Well,
the only difference is he calls himself a
haven't seen
journalist.
him.
now.
I think we
If
all
he
know-
can't- You know what I'm saying? If he can't get an interview with him,
I think we
you
all
guys are
know.
screwed.
I think we all know this pre-taped interview is not going to be the make it moment, like you said.
right.
But every moment from here on out can be the break it moment, and I think that's the position he's in that's new. All right, coming up.
I agree with you.
I knew you did because I'm right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.